Good morning, everybody. It's great to see so many here in some ways, and in other ways it's daunting. But myself and the next few speakers have retitled this section as Revenge of the Bureaucrats. You've had a great introduction to technology, and it's been very exciting, but I'm afraid we're going to bring that down a peg or two, as best we can. Also, we're changing the format somewhat in the sense that we were asked also to allow time at the end of our briefing for questions. So, of the 10-minute session, I'll talk for about 5 minutes, and then we'll take 5 minutes of questions, if anybody has them. Also, we've had the ad for Mayo. We had the ad for Vietnam. While I'm speaking, I'm a proud Dub. There'll be a little video running as well to show the beauty that is Dublin. I'm not trying to go against Mayo or anything else, but just keeping it running there in the background, just to keep you occupied if what I'm saying isn't keeping you occupied. So, somebody pointed out to me as we walked around, it was nice to see the regulators coming out of their ivory towers. Believe me, if you work in my office, it's not an ivory tower by any stretch of the imagination. But from the start, aviation is regulated, it needs to be regulated, and the IAA has one central tenet: safety. We don't regulate for the sake of regulation. We don't simply take EU or ICAO stuff and apply it for the sake of applying rules. We legislate for safety. And we legislate for safety because it is the right thing to do and it is needed. Society expects to be protected. And society is playing more and more of a part in drones especially, compared to perhaps manned aviation, which went before it. And if ICAO and EASA had no rules, we'd still have to have rules. We have rules for clothes, we have rules for fireworks, we have rules for all sorts of things, so why not drones? They're no different. When it comes to regulation itself, we like to think in the IAA that what we do well. Last year's audit by ICAO placed us second in Europe and fifth in the world in terms of the efficiency and effectiveness of our regulatory system. So that underpins, I suppose, the effect that Irish aviation and the place that Irish aviation has in the world. So it is important that we get our standards right because we support that worldwide aviation. And remember, aviation in Ireland contributes 4% to the GDP, which is not inconsequential. And some statistician has worked out that an Irish registered, owned, operated, or leased aircraft lands and takes off every 2 minutes around the world. So, given our size, we play a big part in aviation generally. Anyway, back to drones. What are drones? Drones, simply new technology. Technology pushing boundaries, and we've seen that here already this morning. Drones are innovation embodied, where that's pushing fast in one direction, regulation traditionally slow, traditionally cautious. Drones and drone legislation in particular has taxed people the world over. ICAO, EASA, the JARIS group, you'll have heard of them all. They've had more meetings than I even care to start listing. The issue of drone legislation, in essence, is not easy. If it was, sure it would have been done a long time ago. So why is it so difficult? Well, perhaps conservative aviation regulators have been looking at the issue from the wrong perspective. They've applied years of regulatory and safety experience to something which the majority of users don't even believe to be aviation. To a lot of operators, a drone is not really an aircraft. It's more a flying phone. It has all the same connectivity, camera attributes of your average modern-day phone. But by every definition that we have, drones, ORPAS, UAVs, UAS, whatever way you want, they are aircraft. So actually, if you were to look at them in pure essence at the moment, they shouldn't fly at all, because legally basic aviation regulation, Sarah. They need a certificate of airworthiness before they fly, and then there's a long list after that of other attributes that they would have to meet. So maybe the fact that they are flying, have come so far, maybe bureaucrats and regulators are not so pedantic as they might seem. But in an odd way, the concerns that are manifesting themselves don't simply relate to aviation. And maybe that's, again, what's different about drones. It is arguable that security and privacy issues are more important to society. So, if I'm to judge by the complaints we receive, very few of them are aviation related. The bulk of them will be people ringing up saying there's a drone flying over my house, he's videoing my children, how do I know what he's doing, does he have a license, and so on. So that will be the bulk of the stuff that we're getting. Yes, there have been near misses with aircraft, but thankfully for Irish registered aircraft, they're few and far between at the moment, and hopefully it stays that way. But so far regulators have, EASA in particular, have looked at that societal issues, seized on that, and decided, well, we're small, it would be impossible to police the number of drones that are out there anyway, and the rate of growth is such that we'd never be able to do it. So they turned around and said, well, the biggest problems are societal, therefore the local police force can effectively look after it. They can do it. So in one fell swoop, they took that and handed it over, apart from minor aviation concerns, and made it a local police issue for everything less than 25 kilos. Problem was, they didn't tell the various police forces around Europe that they were going to do that. So, they weren't prepared for it, and will take some education as well. So, but from a societal effect, we now have a non-aviation group with limited aviation experience, or at best, policing a group of drone operators, on the other hand, a lot of whom are in their teens, who don't understand that they're actually involved in aviation. So, how do we solve that dilemma? Drones were born of technology, as I said, but remember, aviation itself was born of technology. It has always been at the cutting edge of technology. So, introducing technology within the aviation sphere is not new. It goes right back to the Wright brothers, and we've managed it all along the way. So, bringing it all together, the title of the talk Suzanne gave me and Philip gave me was the regulator's perspective. Actually, it's probably more the regulator's dilemma. So if we can just briefly take you, where are we going here in Ireland? Well, most of you who are involved will know that we have our latest statutory instrument on drones and unmanned aircraft out there. At the moment, it's in the consult phase with a closing date next week, if I remember rightly, for you all to get your comments back. And we do and would appreciate those comments. We need your opinions, and I can tell you they will be considered before we issue the final SI. And that final SI, though we are up against a deadline because everybody tells us that drones are the #1 toy for Christmas this year, so we're expecting, rather a lot of them to appear under Christmas trees and to start flying shortly after Christmas. So we want to have that out and ready. Going back to that dilemma I spoke about, I'm not sure I can ever square that circle to everybody's satisfaction. But I'll give you a few thoughts just on areas that we see as important and where we're going. Number one will always be, and has always to be, safety. That may sound somewhat oxymoron, but remember, safety can be viewed in many different ways by many different people depending on where they're coming from. And that's obvious with some of the replies we've got already. So we've got to balance that up as best we can and come up with what we believe to be the safest and the best answer. Obviously, if there's a mismatch between, for example, the policing and the policed in the area of drones, there's a big education remit that we have to undertake. And we will undertake that. Where do drones fit in, both in terms of societal and where do they fit in aviation? Why is training important? A lot of kids will just buy them straight out of the box and start flying them and learn by their mistakes. We can't necessarily afford that all the time. We're looking at different ways that we can improve education. And one of the areas we're targeting next year is to get out to various schools and into the transition year program and start trying to get at that age group so that we can educate them as early as possible and hopefully get the right message out. Next area we're going to have to look at is standards. And that probably is a combination of what I've said before, the safety and the education remit. And we have to set absolute minimum standards, especially in the commercial side. Yes, we have them there already. We have approved syllabi, as those of you in the industry will know, and we have approved courses in schools. So we are some of the way along that, but we have to encourage a setting of standards further down the scale. I suppose another point we will focus on is that as a regulator and regulating this whole new world, which is so technologically advanced, we intend using all available technology to make, if you like, the regulatory function as easy and as simple for everybody. And we see ourselves in the Irish Aviation Authority as a technological organisation. And if you think those in the aviation industry would know, we're involved in COOPANS, which is a multinational air traffic control system. We also have a share in Aviation, which is satellite-based ADSB. So we are at the forefront in a lot of what is happening in aviation. And I suppose one of the key issues that we are looking at and will be contained in the SI and won't change one way or the other, is that we're going to insist on the registration of every drone. And that's every drone above 1 kilo. We're taking 1 kilo and below as being toys. We're taking everything above that as requiring registration. And as I say, we'll try and use technology to make that whole registration system as easy and as straightforward as possible for everybody. Now, I suppose I came across a quote during the week. The secret of change is to focus all your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. And that sounds like something that applies to this generation, but that goes down to Socrates, who wasn't around today or yesterday. So what we're dealing with is not new. Mankind has dealt with change. Change is nothing new. We'll roll with it. We will come up with the answers. We can only come up with the right answers if everybody involved in the industry works together and works with us. And I suppose in this lies the answer to that regulator's dilemma. Thank you very much. And open to questions.